These are 5 Canadian retirement benefits that quietly disappear, get clawed back, or get taxed into the ground the moment you decide to retire outside Canada. If you've spent your entire working life paying into the system, picturing all that money following you to a beach in Mexico or a villa in Portugal, I have some news for you. Some of it does follow. Some of it absolutely does not. And one of these benefits cuts off in exactly 6 months, whether you knew about the rule or not. Here is the setup. Canada runs 3 main retirement programs, and you've heard the names 100 times. CPP, the Canada Pension Plan, OAS, Old Age Security, and GIS, the Guaranteed Income Supplement. They sound similar. They get bundled together in every retirement article you read. But the second you stop being a Canadian resident, these 3 programs behave in 3 completely different ways. One travels with you anywhere on Earth. One carries a 20-year rule most Canadians have never even heard of. And the third one is the trap. Let's start with the good news, because there actually is some. Number 1 on the loss list is the one you don't actually lose, which is CPP. The Canada Pension Plan follows you anywhere, whether you land in Mexico, Thailand, Portugal, or Costa Rica. None of it matters geographically. You paid into CPP through every paycheck of your working life, which means that money belongs to you. The maximum CPP retirement pension at age 65 in 2025 sits at $1,433 a month, while the average for new beneficiaries in late 2025 came in at $848.37. Whatever your personal number happens to be, that check keeps arriving. Here is where people get blindsided. Just because CPP keeps coming doesn't mean it lands in your account in full, which brings us to the first real loss. Number 2, you lose a chunk of every check to non-resident withholding tax. The second, you stop being a Canadian tax resident. Canada starts withholding tax on your CPP and your OAS before the money even reaches your account, and the default rate is 25% straight off the top under Part the 13 of the Income Tax Act. But here is the thing that decides whether retiring abroad turns out brilliant or brutal. The country you move to matters enormously, because Canada holds tax treaties with a long list of nations that knock that 25% down to something far more livable. Retire to the United States or the United Kingdom, and your withholding rate on CPP and OAS drops to 0. Canada takes nothing. Choose Mexico, Germany, France, Spain, Australia, Ireland, Portugal, or Switzerland, and the rate falls to 15%. Pick Italy or the Netherlands, and OAS gets hit with the full 25, while CPP eases down to 15. The Philippines holds the full 25 on both. Finland sits at 20%, and the Dominican Republic lands at 18. And this is where it gets worse. Settle in a country with no tax treaty at all, and you are paying the full 25% on every dollar of CPP and OAS every single month for the rest of your life. That is the difference between keeping your full pension and surrendering a quarter of it forever. Decided entirely by which country you fly to. There is a form called the NR5. You can file if you live somewhere without a treaty, or if you want less tax withheld up front. It has to be submitted by the 31st of October to take effect the next January, and once approved, it stays valid for 5 years, worth knowing about. Number 3 is the big one, and that is OAS, along with the 20-year rule almost nobody talks about. Old age security operates nothing like CPP. You never paid into OAS through your paychecks because it draws from general tax revenue, which means Canada attaches strings to it based on how long you actually lived in this country. Here is how the rule works. If you're living in Canada when you apply for OAS, you need at least 10 years of Canadian residence after age 18 to qualify, and that is it. The moment you decide to retire abroad, the standard changes. To keep collecting OAS while living outside Canada, you need at least 20 years of Canadian residence after age 18. Hit those 20 years, and OAS follows you anywhere. Fall short, and here is exactly what the Old Age Security Act spells out in Section 9, subsection 3. Payment of the pension is suspended 6 months after the month in which the pensioner ceased to reside in Canada. 6 months, then it stops. Think about who this hits hardest. Picture someone who immigrated to Canada at age 45, worked here for 20 solid years, paid their taxes, contributed, and retired at 65. They qualify for OAS while in Canada, but the day they move back to their home country to retire, the clock begins ticking. 6 months later, the OAS checks stop landing in the account. The amounts on the table here aren't small either. During the April to June 2026 quarter, the maximum OAS reaches $743.05 a month if you are between 65 and 74, and climbs to $817.36 if you are 75 or older, because there is a permanent 10% boost that activates at 75, which started back in July of 2022. Lose that pension, and you are walking away from somewhere between $8,900 and $9,800 a year, gone, which leads us straight into number 4, GIS. And this is the loss I want you to watch most closely. The Guaranteed Income Supplement acts as a non-taxable top-up for low-income seniors who already collect OAS. For a single, widowed, or divorced senior during the April to June 2026 quarter, the maximum reaches $1,109.85 a month, which works out to over $13,300 a year, tax-free, landing in the pocket of seniors who need it most. All of it disappears in 6 months, flat. No exceptions based on years of residence, no tax treaty loophole, no appeal grounded in how long you lived here. The OAS Act is clear on this point. If you're absent from Canada for 6 consecutive months, your GIS gets suspended. The same rule applies to the allowance and the allowance for the survivor, the two benefits aimed at low-income spouses between 60 and 64. The allowance can pay up to $1,411.13 a month, and the allowance for the survivor climbs to $1,682.15. All of it cuts off at the 6-month mark. Here is the part that has wrecked real families. Service Canada offers very direct public guidance on this. Planning to leave Canada for more than 6 months means you must tell them, or you create an overpayment that you'll eventually have to repay. They will come back for it too. There are actual cases on record where Canada pursued estates after a senior had passed away, looking to claw back GS overpayments because the recipient had been outside Canada longer than 6 months and never reported it. If you're a senior relying on GIS, and you're dreaming of spending winters somewhere warm, The rule stays simple. More than 6 months out, you lose it. Skip the report, and they will eventually find out, and the bill comes due. Number 5 is your provincial health coverage. And this one people forget about until it actually matters, which usually means a hospital in a country where they don't speak the language. Nearly every province requires you to be physically present for at least 182 days, roughly 6 months per calendar year to keep your provincial health card valid. Leave for longer than that, and your coverage ends. The federal government puts this in plain language on travel GCCA. Even when your provincial plan does cover emergencies abroad, the reimbursement caps at whatever that procedure would have cost in Canada, which almost always works out to a fraction of what it actually costs overseas. Picturing yourself flying back to Canada for major surgery once you've retired in Panama or Thailand means you have to plan for the gap. Private international health insurance stops being optional at that point because it is the only thing standing between you and a bill that can erase your retirement savings in a single hospital stay. Now here is a bonus loss worth covering before we wrap up, because it catches people completely off guard. Your TFSA, the tax-free savings account. You can keep the account open after leaving Canada, and the money inside it stays sheltered from Canadian tax. The second you become a non-resident, though, contributing another dollar triggers a 1% per month penalty tax on any new contribution every single month until you take it out. Retire to the United States, and the IRS doesn't even recognize the TFSA as tax-sheltered, taxing the gains as if it were a regular investment account. The same logic hits your RRSP. Lump sum withdrawals as a non-resident gets slammed with the full 25% withholding tax, while periodic pension payments out of a RIF to a treaty country often ease down to 15%. The days of pulling out a big chunk tax efficiently end the moment you stop being a Canadian resident. Let's tie all of this together. Retire outside Canada, and here is what actually happens. CPP follows you. OAS follows you only if you carry 20 years of Canadian residence after age 18. Otherwise, it stops in 6 months. GIS stops in 6 months, period. Your provincial health coverage ends at roughly 6 months out of the country. Your TFSA freezes, and depending on which country you choose, anywhere from 0 to 25% of every CPP and OAS check gets withheld at the border before you ever see a dollar of it. The retirees who get this right do one thing differently from the ones who don't. They pick their destination country based on the tax treaty, not just the beach. Choosing a country where Canada withholds 0% on your CPP and OAS versus one where they withhold the full 25 can mean thousands of extra dollars a year in your pocket for the rest of your life. The Canadian retirement system was designed to take care of you inside Canada. Once you leave, the rules shift, and they shift fast. Know which benefits travel, know which ones expire at the 6-month mark, and know exactly what your destination country's tax treaty looks like before you ever book the one-way ticket. Because the worst time to discover you, lost your OAS, your GIS, and your health coverage is when you are standing in a foreign country at 70 years old, watching the deposits stop hitting your account.